I'll read a little bit from Paving Paradise, which is a book that grew out of a series of stories that a colleague, Matt Waite, and I did for the paper called Florida's Vanishing Wetlands. But I've got a new book out called Manatee Insanity, and if you guys had read, which would you rather me do a reading from? Which one would you prefer? You pick.
You pick.
Paving Paradise.
Paving Paradise? Okay, good. Because I know what to read from that one. That's good. I always like to read from the prologue, just because I think this kind of sets up the whole thing. This is from a section called The Numbers Game. Gail Norton needed some good news. For 5 tumultuous years, the silver-haired Norton had served as Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior. From the day in 2001 that President George W. Bush had appointed her to oversee the nation's parks, wildlife, Indian tribes, and public lands, she had been embroiled in controversy. Environmentalists condemned her for trying to open up Arctic wilderness to oil drilling. Federal judges cited her twice for contempt of court. Her department became mired in a nasty scandal involving a Washington lobbyist named Jack Abramoff that would eventually lead to her second-in-command pleading guilty to lying to Congress. Her inspector general was conducting an investigation of the agency's top management that would soon produce still more unflattering headlines. When Norton announced her resignation in 2006, the president of the environmental group Defenders of Wildlife put out a press release containing just 2 words: good riddance. Yet Norton was determined to leave office on a positive note. On March 30th, 2006, her next to last day on the job, she called a press conference to announce a truly impressive accomplishment, the achievement of something called no net loss. Ever since the Clean Water Act became law in 1972, America's wetlands were supposed to be protected from destruction, yet somehow America kept on destroying its swamps, bogs, and marshes. So in 1989, then President George H.W. Bush vowed to turn the tide. He promised that from then on there would be no net loss of wetlands. The promise of no net loss was so politically popular that the presidents who followed, Democrat and Republican, also made it their policy. I was like, when I'm doing this as a speech, I always tell people it was so popular, Bill Clinton embraced it, as indeed he embraced so many things. For 17 years, politicians had been promising to reverse the loss of the nation's dwindling wetlands. No net loss was an easy promise to make, but it was difficult to carry out. Wetlands kept getting in everyone's way. Every year, thousands of acres of swamps were still being converted into new suburbs, golf courses, highways, mines, farms, big box stores. But now, at last, Norton was ready to announce that the elusive goal of no net loss had been reached. In fact, a new report from her department said that between 1998 and 2004, during the largest real estate boom in American history, the lower 48 states had actually gained wetlands. The report found an estimated 191,750 acres of new wetlands nationwide. At her press conference, a smiling Norton called this good news not only for biologists, but for all of us. We all depend on wetlands as the nurseries of life. But then the reporters, who before the press conference had been briefed by clearly annoyed environmental activists, began questioning Norton's numbers. Weren't most of those wetland gains not really wetlands? Weren't they actually artificial ponds? Ornamental fountains? Golf course water hazards even? Wasn't it true that without all those artificial ponds, the numbers in the report said just the opposite of what Norton had just announced? Namely, that the nation was still losing tens of thousands of acres of natural, life-sustaining wetlands? Norton's smile faded. Ponds, she snapped, are getting a bad rap. Sure, there was an increase in the number of man-made ponds, she said, but people like having ponds as an amenity. Ponds are being more widely used for stormwater runoff or for other reasons, and that is beneficial. That is something that adds wetlands. Again, they may not be the highest value wetlands, but the fact that people value wetlands and they take private actions to add wetlands is something we view as positive.